I was crouched in my neighbor's dark guest room at 3 a.m., watching a stranger pick the lock to my own study through a pair of binoculars, when I heard my daughter-in-law say the words that changed everything. "Hurry up and crack that safe. We need to sell everything before the old bitch comes back." My son, was standing right beside her, holding the flashlight steady while this criminal worked. And me, I wasn't on some meditation retreat like they thought. I was recording every single second on my phone, watching my own child rob me blind. See, they made one critical mistake. They assumed that because I'm 72 years old, I'd be easy to fool. What they forgot is that I spent 30 years as a judge sending people exactly like them to prison. And now I was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. Let me back up for a second, because you need to understand how I got here, hiding in the dark, spying on my own family like some kind of detective. 3 days earlier, we'd had a lovely Sunday dinner. Monica knocked over her wine glass. "Accidentally," she said, and the red liquid spread across my retirement paperwork like blood. But it was what fell out of her purse that made my stomach drop. A brochure for Sunset Hills Senior Living. She'd already circled the memory care unit. Lucas wouldn't look at me. He just mumbled something about options and "what's best for you, Mom." That's when I knew. They weren't just trying to get me out of my house. They were trying to get me declared incompetent. And the second I was locked away in some nursing home, drooling over applesauce, everything I'd worked for, my home, my savings, my legacy, would be theirs. So I set a trap. I announced I was leaving for a 10-day silent retreat. No phones, no emails, complete isolation. Monica's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She practically shoved me out the door. But I didn't drive upstate. I drove 2 blocks to Dorothy's house and set up surveillance. For 3 days, I watched them throw parties, pawn my jewelry, and trash my home like it was some kind of vacation rental. I watched my son become someone I didn't recognize. And then, on that 3rd night, they brought in a locksmith, a criminal locksmith, to crack open my safe. The same safe that held everything: property deeds, stock certificates, my will. I filmed it all. Every word, every theft. And when Monica said she'd sell everything before the old bat changes her will, I smiled in the dark. Because that wasn't just robbery anymore. That was conspiracy. That was fraud. That was a federal case. And at 6 May, I walked through my front door with 2 police officers and watched my daughter-in-law's face crumble as the handcuffs clicked shut. "Don't worry, Monica," I said sweetly. "I found a place for you too. The jumpsuit's orange." But what I did next, that's when the real revenge began. 2 weeks before that 3 a.m. stakeout, I thought I was just being a good mother. Lucas showed up at my door on a Tuesday afternoon with Monica and 3 suitcases, looking like a kicked puppy. "Mom, I hate to ask, but we need a place to stay, just for a month or 2. I lost my job, and we're between apartments." I didn't hesitate. I opened my door wide, set them up in the guest wing, and told Lucas we'd figure it out together. That's what mothers do, right? We catch our kids when they fall. But here's what I didn't know. Lucas didn't lose his job. He got fired. Because Monica had racked up so much debt on his credit cards that he'd been embezzling from his own company to keep up. And that temporary stay and more. Monica had already been Googling elderly incompetence lawyers before they'd even unpacked. The signs started small. My grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones I kept in the velvet box on my dresser, just vanished. Monica said she'd never seen them. Then my spare car keys disappeared, a silver picture frame from the mantel. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I was getting forgetful. But then I found the credit card statements. I wasn't snooping. I was taking out the trash. And there they were, crumpled at the bottom of the bin. American Express, Capital One, Discover, all opened in my name, all with balances in the thousands. My hands started shaking as I smoothed out the paper. Someone had been using my identity, my perfect credit score, to fund a shopping spree. And when I saw the shipping address, my own house, I knew exactly who. I confronted Lucas that night, showed him the statements, the missing jewelry, everything. And you know what he said? "Mom, are you sure you didn't open those cards and forget? You've been a little confused lately." I actually laughed. Confused? I'd just finished reviewing a 50-page legal brief for a friend's case last week. But Monica was standing behind him, her hand on his shoulder, nodding sadly like I was some tragic Alzheimer's patient. "Eleanor, it's okay," she cooed. "This happens. Maybe we should talk to your doctor about, options." That's when I understood. This wasn't just theft. This was gaslighting. They were building a narrative. The confused old woman, the concerned family, so that when they finally made their move, no one would believe me. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I'd spent 3 decades putting criminals behind bars. And now 2 of them were sleeping down the hall, plotting God knows what. But if they thought I'd just roll over and let them destroy me, well, they were about to learn why I never lost a case. I stopped confronting them after that night. Cold turkey. Lucas would ask if I'd found my earrings yet, and I'd just smile and say, "Oh, I'm sure they'll turn up." Monica would make little comments about my memory lapses, and I'd nod along like a docile grandmother. But inside, I was building a case. See, the thing about being a judge for 30 years is that you learn patience. You learn to gather evidence quietly, methodically, without tipping off the defendant. So that's exactly what I did. I started documenting everything. Photographs of the credit card statements before I discovered them. Recordings of their conversations when they thought I was napping. Even a little notebook where I tracked every suspicious moment. And then, one morning, I told them I had a doctor's appointment and drove straight to the courthouse. My old colleague, Richard Chen, worked in financial forensics now, tracking money trails for fraud cases. He owed me a favor from a case I'd helped him win back in 2015, and I was ready to cash it in. I walked into his office with a folder full of evidence and said, "Rich, I need you to dig into my son's finances, discreetly." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. 3 days later, he called me with news that made my blood run cold. Lucas hadn't just lost his job. He'd gambled away his entire life. He'd secretly taken out a second mortgage on his house, then a third, all to fund Monica's spending and some idiotic cryptocurrency scheme she'd convinced him was a sure thing. They were $340,000 in debt. The bank was weeks away from foreclosure. And the only asset left in the family with any real value, my house, my savings, me. That's when it clicked. The nursing home brochure wasn't just about getting me out of the way. It was about getting me declared incompetent so they could access my assets legally. Power of attorney, conservatorship. They'd control everything, sell everything. And by the time I woke up, in some locked memory care unit, there'd be nothing left. I sat in my car outside Richard's office, staring at the financial report, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind. The kind that wins cases. I needed to catch them in the act. Something so undeniable, so criminal, that Lucas couldn't charm his way out, and Monica couldn't gaslight her way through. And that's when I remembered the safe. My study safe. The one that held the deed to this house. My stock certificates. Everything valuable that wasn't liquid cash. If they were desperate enough, and I knew they were, they'd go for it. They just needed the right opportunity. So I decided to give them one. I'd disappear for a week, make them think they had free rein, and watch what they did when they thought no one was looking. I didn't know exactly what I'd catch them doing, but I knew it would be enough to bury them. Dorothy didn't even blink when I showed up at her door with a suitcase and a pair of binoculars. "Eleanor, honey, what kind of trouble are we getting into?" she asked, pouring me a cup of coffee. I told her everything: the fraud, the gaslighting, the nursing home plan, and her face went pale. "Those bastards," she whispered. Within an hour, she'd set me up in her guest room with a direct view of my living room windows across the street. I left for my meditation retreat that afternoon, hugged Lucas goodbye, he barely squeezed back, and watched Monica's face light up like she'd just won the lottery. The second my car turned the corner, I circled back to Dorothy's, and then I waited. The first night, they threw a party. I'm not talking about a quiet dinner with friends. I'm talking music so loud I could hear the bass from across the street. People I'd never seen before stumbling through my garden, and Monica wearing my mother's vintage Chanel jacket like it was some kind of costume. I watched through the binoculars as she posed for selfies in my hallway, champagne glass in hand, laughing with her friends. At one point, she pointed at the formal portrait of me in my judge's robes and said something that made everyone crack up. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The mockery was written all over her face. My hands tightened around the binoculars. Dorothy brought me tea and squeezed my shoulder, but I barely felt it. I just kept watching, kept documenting. Lucas appeared in the frame around midnight, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw him hesitate. He stared at that portrait of me, and his face crumpled like he might cry. But then Monica wrapped her arms around him, whispered something in his ear, and he nodded. Just like that, the guilt vanished. He kissed her, grabbed another beer, and disappeared back into the party. That's when I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. I hadn't just lost my son to greed, I'd lost him to her, and there was no getting him back. The second day was worse. They started going through my belongings like vultures picking at a carcass. I watched Monica carry out boxes of my clothes, designer pieces I'd collected over decades, and load them into her car, probably selling them online. Lucas helped her, his face blank, robotic. They moved my furniture around, redecorated my living room to fit their taste, even swapped out my artwork for some ugly modern prints. It was like watching strangers erase me from my own home. But I didn't move, didn't call them, didn't break. I just sat in that chair, camera in hand, and documented every single theft. By the third night, I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Dorothy had gone to bed hours ago, and I was half asleep in the armchair, the binoculars slipping from my fingers. That's when the headlights cut through the darkness. A black SUV pulled into my driveway at 2:47 a.m., and 3 figures stepped out. Lucas, Monica, and a man I'd never seen before, carrying a bag of tools. My heart stopped. Then it started racing, because I knew exactly what was about to happen. And this time, I was ready. I grabbed my phone so fast I nearly dropped it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I switched the phone to video mode and zoomed in as the 3 of them slipped through my front door. They'd used Lucas's key, obviously, but the way they moved, quick, silent, glancing over their shoulders, told me they knew this was wrong. The stranger went straight for my study, and that's when I got a good look at his face through the window. My stomach dropped. I knew him. Tommy Riggs. I'd sentenced him to 18 months back in 2012 for breaking and entering. He'd stood in my courtroom, cocky as hell, and told me I'd regret it someday. Guess he finally found his chance for payback. Monica must have dug him up from whatever hole he'd crawled into. She stood behind him, arms crossed, watching him work on my safe like a supervisor on a construction site. And Lucas was pacing, back and forth, running his hands through his hair. Even from across the street, I could see the panic on his face. Tommy worked fast. Too fast. He had the safe open in less than 10 minutes. Some kind of electronic device I didn't recognize. Probably something he'd picked up since his release. The moment the door swung open, Monica lunged forward and started pulling out documents. My property deed, stock certificates, the title to my car, my will. She spread them across my desk like she was shopping at a yard sale, picking and choosing what was valuable. "This one's worth at least 200 grand, she said, holding up a stock certificate. Her voice came through the cracked window clear as day, and I angled my phone to capture every word. "We sell these tomorrow, transfer the money offshore, and by the time she gets back and figures it out, we'll be gone." Lucas stopped pacing. "Monica, I don't know if what, Lucas?" she snapped. "If you want to lose everything. If you want us living in your mom's basement forever, playing nurse to some old woman who's losing her mind anyway." I felt the words like a slap, but I kept recording, kept breathing. This was evidence. This was everything. Then Tommy looked up, straight at the window where I was hiding. My heart stopped. I ducked below the sill, phone clutched to my chest, praying he hadn't seen the glint of the lens. Dorothy's house was dark, completely dark. But what if he'd noticed movement? What if he came over here? I held my breath, counting the seconds. 10, 20, 30. Finally, I heard Monica's voice again. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing," Tommy muttered. "Thought I saw something. We should hurry." I exhaled slowly and peeked over the sill again, hands steadier now. They were packing everything into a duffel bag, every document, every certificate, everything that proved I owned my own life. And then Monica said the words that sealed her fate. "I've been practicing Eleanor's signature for weeks. We'll forge a power of attorney, backdate it, and make it look like she gave us permission months ago. No one will question it. She's old. She's confused. Hell, we've already got half the neighbors thinking she's losing it." Tommy laughed. Lucas didn't, but he didn't stop her either. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just robbery. This was identity fraud, forgery, conspiracy, federal crimes that carried sentences longer than Tommy's last stint. I had everything I needed. Every word, every action, every face. I waited until they loaded up the SUV and drove away, taillights disappearing down the street. Then I sat back in that chair, phone still recording, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The question now wasn't if I'd destroy them. It was how much mercy I'd show when I did. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at Dorothy's kitchen table, uploaded the video to 3 separate cloud accounts, and then called my lawyer at 6:00 a.m. sharp. "Martin, I need you to meet me at the police station in an hour, and bring everything we've got on identity theft and elder fraud." He started to ask questions, but I cut him off. "Just trust me, this is going to be big." By 7:30 a.m., I was sitting across from Detective Maria Gonzalez, a woman I'd worked with on dozens of cases during my years on the bench, watching her face go pale as she viewed my footage. When Monica's voice came through the speakers, "Sell everything before the old bat comes back," Maria looked up at me with something close to fury. "Judge Hartwell, I'm so sorry this happened to you." I shook my head. "Don't be sorry. Just arrest them." She made the call right there, and 2 hours later, I got the text I'd been waiting for. "Both in custody, ready when you are." The police station felt different from the other side. I'd walked these halls 1,000 times as a judge, but never as a victim. Martin stayed close, briefcase in hand, as we moved through the maze of desks and holding cells. Maria stopped outside interview room B. "Lucas is in here. You sure you want to do this?" I nodded. She opened the door, and there he was, my son, my baby, sitting at a metal table in handcuffs, his eyes red and swollen. The moment he saw me, he broke. Mom. Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't want... It was Monica, she... Stop. My voice came out colder than I'd ever heard it. He flinched like I'd struck him. I sat down across from him, folded my hands on the table, and stared into the eyes of the boy I'd raised. Except he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a 43-year-old man who'd let his wife rob his own mother. You were going to put me in a nursing home, Lucas. You were going to have me declared incompetent so you could steal everything I've worked for. Do you understand what that means? You weren't just going to take my money. You were going to take my freedom. He started crying harder, choking on his words. I know, I'm so sorry. It got out of control. The debt, the pressure. Monica kept saying it was the only way, that you'd never even notice, that you'd be happier somewhere with people taking care of you. Happier? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. Lucas, I'm 72 years old. I still run 5 miles every morning. I volunteer at the legal clinic. I'm sharper now than most people half my age. And you let her convince you I was losing my mind because it was convenient. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to plead guilty. You're going to testify against Monica. You're going to return every single penny you stole, and yes, I know about the credit cards, the forged signatures, all of it. And maybe, if you do all of that, I'll ask the prosecutor to go easy on you. But understand this, Lucas. You stopped being my son the moment you chose her over me. The woman sitting in front of you right now, I'm not your mother. I'm the judge who's about to make sure you never do this to anyone else. I stood up, and he reached for me, handcuffs clinking against the table. Mom, please. But I was already walking toward the door, because I had one more visit to make. And this one I was going to enjoy. Monica was in interview room C, and the difference between her and Lucas was almost laughable. Where my son had been crying, broken, desperate, Monica sat with her arms crossed, perfectly composed, like she was waiting for a late appointment at the salon. When I walked in, she didn't even flinch, just gave me that cold smile I'd seen 100 times before. Eleanor, I was wondering when you'd show up. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down slowly, deliberately. Maria stood in the corner, arms folded, watching. You know, Monica said, leaning forward, this whole thing is a misunderstanding. We were just trying to help you, organize your finances, make sure everything was in order. Cut the crap, Monica. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. I have you on video breaking into my safe. I have you on audio admitting to forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. I have bank records showing you've been using my identity to open credit cards. And I have a criminal locksmith who's very eager to testify against you in exchange for a lighter sentence. The color drained from her face. Good. She recovered quickly, though. I'll give her that. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. Okay. Fine. Let's talk deal. You drop the charges, and I don't tell the prosecutor about your little secrets. I actually laughed out loud. Maria shifted behind me, but I waved her off. Secrets. Monica, I'm a federal judge with a spotless record. I've been investigated, vetted, and cleared more times than you've changed your hair color. What exactly do you think you have on me? She leaned back, trying to look confident, but I could see the panic creeping in. Lucas told me things. About cases you mishandled, evidence you suppressed. He told you lies to make himself feel better about robbing his own mother, I said flatly. And even if he hadn't, do you really think any prosecutor in this state would take the word of a convicted fraudster over mine? Her jaw tightened. You can't prove intent. We'll say we thought you gave us permission. You practiced my signature. Monica, you said it yourself on the video. And I've been practicing Eleanor's signature for weeks. That's premeditation. That's federal fraud. I leaned forward now, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit in that cell until your arraignment. And because you're a flight risk, and believe me, I'll make sure the judge knows about those offshore accounts. You're not getting bail. The arraignment came faster than she expected. I called in a favor with Judge Raymond Booker, an old colleague who owed me for a case I'd helped him with years ago. Monica's public defender tried his best, painted me as a vindictive old woman with a vendetta, suggested I was confused about what I'd seen. But the moment Martin played that video in open court, it was over. You could hear Monica's voice echoing through the courtroom. Sell everything before the old bat comes back. Ray's face went stone cold. My bail is denied. Miss Hartwell, you'll remain in custody pending trial. Monica's face twisted in fury. She whipped around to glare at me, sitting in the gallery, and I just smiled. That same cold smile I'd given her at my front door when the police arrived. Lucas's hearing was next, and this is where it got complicated. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the theft, the sheer cruelty, he was still my son. And some part of me, the part that remembered rocking him to sleep as a baby, couldn't let him rot in prison for 20 years. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I made a deal. Lucas would plead guilty to conspiracy and theft. He'd testify against Monica, providing every detail of her plan. He'd enter a court-mandated rehabilitation program for financial addiction and codependency. And in exchange, I'd ask the prosecutor to recommend 5 years probation instead of prison time. But there was one condition. One non-negotiable term that I made crystal clear to his lawyer, to the prosecutor, and to Lucas himself. He would never, ever contact me again unless I reached out first. Because I meant what I said in that interrogation room. The boy I raised. He was gone. And I didn't know if I'd ever get him back. The day I got my house back, I stood in the doorway for a full minute before I could bring myself to step inside. It didn't even look like my home anymore. The walls were scuffed, the carpets stained with God knows what, and there were empty champagne bottles lined up on my grandmother's antique credenza like trophies. Someone, probably Monica, had rearranged all my furniture, shoved my carefully curated bookshelves into the corner to make room for a massive flat-screen TV I'd never seen before. The air smelled like stale perfume and cigarettes. My house. The place where I'd raised Lucas, where I'd celebrated promotions and retirements, where I'd built a life of dignity and order, and they'd turned it into a frat house. I set my purse down on the kitchen counter, now cluttered with takeout containers and dirty dishes, and pulled out my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just made a call. Yes, I need a full estate cleaning service. Today, if possible. And I need a locksmith. I'm changing every lock in the house. By noon, the house was swarming with people. The cleaning crew worked like a SWAT team, hauling out garbage bags full of trash, scrubbing walls, ripping up the ruined carpets. I followed them room by room, pointing out everything that needed to go. That couch? Monica sat on it. Donate it. Those dishes? She used them. Trash. I know it sounds extreme, maybe even petty, but I didn't care. I wanted every trace of her gone. The lead cleaner, a kind woman named Rosa, gave me a sympathetic look as she carried out a box of linens. "I'm sorry this happened to you, ma'am." I nodded but didn't elaborate. How could I explain that I wasn't just cleaning my house? I was performing an exorcism. Every item they touched, every space they invaded, felt contaminated. So I purged it all. The guest bedroom furniture, the bathroom towels, even the kitchen table where we'd had that last Sunday dinner, the one where Monica spilled wine on my retirement papers. I had them haul it to the curb and ordered a new one online that same afternoon. But it was in the guest bedroom, their bedroom, where I found the thing that made my blood turn to ice. I was supervising the crew as they stripped the bed when I noticed a small leather journal wedged between the mattress and the box spring. I pulled it out, flipped it open, and froze. Monica's handwriting, page after page of notes, dates, plans. March 15th. Convinced Elle that Eleanor forgot about dinner reservation, building the dementia narrative. April 2nd. Researched nursing homes. Sunset Hills has the fastest intake process. April 10th. Contacted lawyer about emergency conservatorship. Need medical documentation. My hands shook as I turned the pages, and then I found it. The entry dated 2 weeks before they moved in. If the nursing home plan doesn't work fast enough, we'll need a backup. Small doses of sleep medication mixed into her tea. Not enough to kill her, just enough to make her disoriented, confused. Documented episodes will speed up the incompetency hearing. I read it 3 times. 4. The words blurred. She was going to poison me, not to kill me outright. That would be too obvious. But to slowly, methodically make me appear senile. To manufacture the dementia she'd been accusing me of. I sank onto the bare mattress, journal clutched in my hands, and felt a rage so pure it was almost calming. This wasn't just theft. This wasn't just fraud. This was attempted murder, drawn out over months, disguised as concern. I stood up, walked downstairs, and called Martin. "I need you to get this to the prosecutor immediately," I said, my voice steady. Monica's sentence just got a lot longer. 6 months later, I stood in my completely renovated living room and barely recognized it. New floors, new furniture, new paint, everything bright and clean and mine again. But the biggest change wasn't the decor. It was me. I'd spent 30 years on the bench dispensing justice for other people. And now I was using everything I'd learned to make sure what happened to me never happened to anyone else. Once a month, I opened my home to a support group for elderly fraud victims, people who'd been scammed by contractors, catfished online, or worse, betrayed by their own families. We'd sit in my living room, share stories, and I'd connect them with legal resources, financial advisors, investigators. The first meeting, a woman named Patricia broke down crying. Her grandson had stolen her life savings. "I feel so stupid," she sobbed. I took her hand and said, "You're not stupid, you're trusting, and they weaponized that against you. But we're going to fix this." And we did. Within 3 months, Patricia's grandson was in jail, and she'd recovered most of her money. That's when I realized this was my purpose now. Not retirement, not quiet Sunday dinners. Lucas got out of rehab in May. I got a letter from his counselor saying he'd completed the program, that he was working as a clerk at a law firm downtown, living in a modest apartment, attending therapy twice a week. The counselor asked if I'd be willing to meet with him. I didn't respond for 2 weeks. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know if I could. Finally, I agreed to a supervised meeting at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. When he walked in, he looked different, thinner, older. His eyes met mine across the room, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Shame. Real, deep, soul-crushing shame. He sat down, hands shaking around his coffee cup. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. I needed you to know that I understand what I did. Not just the theft, the betrayal. I let her convince me you were the problem when I was the one destroying everything." I didn't respond right away. I just studied him, the stranger with my son's face. "You're working at Morrison and Blake?" I asked finally. He nodded. "Filing, mostly, answering phones. It's humbling, but it's honest." "Good," I said, and I meant it. But here's the thing. I didn't invite him back into my life. Not fully. We met for coffee once a month after that, always in public, always brief. He'd tell me about his job, his therapy, his progress. I'd listen, nod, ask questions. But I never said, "I love you." I never hugged him goodbye. Because some bridges, once burned, can't be fully rebuilt. They can be stabilized, maybe reinforced enough to hold weight again someday. but they'll never be what they were. And I'd made peace with that. Monica, on the other hand, got exactly what she deserved. The journal evidence pushed her charges into attempted elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. The prosecutor added the poisoning plot to the indictment, and suddenly, her smug smile disappeared. She took a plea deal to avoid trial, 15 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for at least 10. I didn't attend her sentencing. I didn't need to. I was already moving forward, hosting another support group meeting, consulting on another case, living the life she'd tried to steal. And every morning, when I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by my own things, I smiled, because they'd underestimated me. They'd seen a 72-year-old woman and assumed she'd be easy prey. What they didn't see was the judge, the strategist, the survivor. And now I was free. So here's what I learned from all of this. People will always underestimate you if you let them. They'll see your age, your kindness, your trust, and they'll think those things make you weak. But here's the truth. The thing Monica and Lucas learned too late. Wisdom isn't weakness. Experience isn't frailty. And a woman who spent 30 years sending criminals to prison. She knows exactly how to catch one. They thought my age made me vulnerable. What they didn't realize is that it made me dangerous. Because I'd seen every con, every manipulation, every desperate lie that people tell when they're backed into a corner. And I knew how to dismantle every single one. I didn't lose a son that day I called the police. I saved myself from 2 predators who wore the masks of family. And yeah, some nights I still lie awake wondering if I could have done something different. If there was a moment I missed where I could have pulled Lucas back from the edge. But then I remember Monica's voice on that video. Before the old bat comes back. And I know I made the right choice. You can't save someone who's already decided you're the enemy. My house is full again now, but not with thieves. It's full of laughter from the support groups. Full of success stories from people who fought back and won. Full of the kind of purpose I never had when I was just existing. Retirement isn't about fading away. It's about choosing what battles are worth fighting. And for me, that battle is making sure no one else gets erased by the people they trusted most. Monica's in prison. Lucas is rebuilding from scratch. And me? I'm hosting Thanksgiving next week for 12 formerly scammed seniors and their families. We're calling it the Survivors Feast. Because that's what we are. Survivors. And I've never felt more alive. But you know what's wild? I thought my story was extreme. A son and daughter-in-law trying to rob me blind, poison me, lock me away. But the next story I'm about to tell you, it's somehow even worse. Because imagine this. You're packing for a business trip. Normal morning. Coffee, suitcase, kiss the kids goodbye. Except when you zip up your luggage, you hear breathing. You open it, and your 7-year-old son is curled up inside, tears streaming down his face. And he whispers, "Mommy, don't go. Daddy said you're going to the sleep hospital and you're never coming back." Turns out, her husband had been planning to have her killed, staged as a medical emergency, so he could cash in her life insurance and run off with his mistress. But that little boy's warning, it gave her just enough time to turn the tables. And what she did next, how she used her husband's own plan to destroy him before he could get to the bank, it'll make your jaw drop. You need to hear what happened when she walked into that boardroom with a recording that ended his life as he knew it.